Hi everyone, Miss Tui here. There are many ways to solve a problem. One of those ways is using the engineering design process. In today's lesson, we will define some of the vocabulary and use a test case to use these skills. For today's lesson, you will need an Ozobot fully charged and calibrated, your color code markers, a pencil, all 3 pages of your engineering design process sheets, and a color code chart. Optionally, white stickers in case you make any mistakes. In today's lesson, you will become familiar with the 8 steps in the engineering design process, define the difference between criteria and constraints, and solve a design problem using an Ozobot. Something to keep in mind about the engineering design process is that it is a circular process that requires questions and solutions at every step. You start by identifying the problem. Next, you identify the criteria and the constraints that you need to work within. The third step is brainstorming. Fourth, you decide on a solution from your brainstormed list. Make a model, try it out, and modify it until you are satisfied that it solves the problem. Lastly, communicate your solution. Let's get started on our first problem. For our example today, we will be using a fairly simple problem just to give you a little bit of experience using the process. First, take a look at your engineering design process planning sheet. You'll see the steps listed on the left and on the right some space for you to write about what you are doing today. The first thing we need to ask is, what problem am I solving? Looking at the engineering design process lesson 1 map, you will see Ozobot needs to get from its locker to the lunchroom. That is our problem. Can you write the problem on your engineering design process planning sheet? Now that we know what we need to accomplish, we need to find out what exactly needs to happen and what limitations we have. The criteria are the requirements of the design or the exactly what needs to happen. Limitations are also known as constraints. Limitations are the restrictions we have to work within. Can you write the definition of criteria and constraints on your engineering design process planning sheet? We know what criteria and constraints are now, so it's time to identify those in the context of our problem, getting Ozobot from its locker to the lunchroom. First, let's write down the criteria. The requirements are get Ozobot from the locker to the lunchroom and use 5 color codes. Can you fill in the criteria we talked about on your engineering design process planning sheet? Constraints. What limitations do we have? Looking at our engineering design process map, there are dotted gray lines all over the page. Ozobot can't cross the dotted lines. That is one of our constraints. We are limited to 1 page, another constraint. Ozobot needs an inch between color codes and intersections to read the codes and execute them. Some codes need more space to execute properly, so keep that in mind. And finally, Ozobot must travel on a line. Can you fill in the constraints we talked about on your engineering design process planning sheet? Our next step is to come up with possible solutions. Brainstorming is one way to accomplish this. If you have not heard of brainstorming before, it is letting your imagination run wild when coming up with possible solutions to a problem as quickly as possible. There are some rules about brainstorming, especially when done within a group of people. First, write everything down. A piece of paper, a whiteboard, tablet or phone, crayon on a napkin. Just write it all down. Second, use your imagination. If anything was possible, how would you solve this problem? Third, no judgment of ideas. Everyone in the group has ideas. Even if the idea would definitely not work, it might spark the perfect idea. Let all ideas be written down. Can you write the 3 rules of brainstorming on the back of your engineering design process planning sheet? Then take 3 minutes and brainstorm some ideas for getting your Ozobot from the locker to the lunchroom. What color codes might you use? Wow, you have a fantastic list of ideas written down. Our next step is to choose one that you feel will solve the problem by meeting the criteria with respect to the limitations. Take 2 minutes and choose one of the ideas you brainstormed and record it in section 4. You've chosen a great idea, and it is now time to put it into action. Using a pencil, begin drawing your solution on the engineering design process map, being sure to leave spaces for your color codes. Keep in mind the limitations we wrote down earlier and leave at least 1 inch between intersections and color codes. Remember, you can always use your color code chart. Once you are happy with the pencil version, use your color code markers to draw the black lines and color codes. Can you create a possible solution? First, record your idea in section 5, then use pencil and color code markers to draw it on your map. The moment of truth has arrived. Time to test your solution. Turn on your Ozobot and place it at the locker. Away it goes. After testing your model, complete the sentence in section 6. How did that go? Did your Ozobot make it to the lunchroom? Did it go how you wanted it to go? What can you do to improve your model? White stickers are very useful, especially if you need to move a color code closer or further away from an intersection, or give your bot more room to execute a code. If you don't have white stickers, just redraw the map on another sheet of paper, incorporating any changes that need to be made. After you make improvements, return to the previous step of testing again. Repeat the modification of your model and testing until you are satisfied with how the problem has been solved. Write down one thing you can do to improve your model in section 7. Make the change and test it again. When you are satisfied that the results meet the criteria in the best way possible, tell a friend, a partner, or your teacher about your solution and the process you used to solve the problem. You can do this in writing or just by talking to them. It is important to communicate the results of your design and testing. You never know when new ideas to solve problems might be sparked by your communication. Can you tell someone else about the solution and the process used to solve this problem? If you are working remotely, you can write what you would tell somebody and share it with them at a later time in Section 8. Nice perseverance in completing this activity. Let's make sure you've covered all the bases. Have you completed the engineering design process planning sheet? Can you explain to a friend or family member the difference between criteria and constraints? Did your Ozobot make it successfully to the lunchroom? Did you use at least 5 color codes? Fantastic! Join us again soon for another activity.